to Sacramento. In that old town I swore I'd never leave. Summers I'd head up to the mountains with my dad and brother who'll try from the stream. Gotta find your own slice of heaven. Gotta get on out, watch the sun go down. Pain in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good, taking it face down. Took a road out to the coast, under the trees with the one I love the most. There we'd walk along the river with our hopes and dreams and our dog's ghost. Gotta find your own slice of heaven. Gotta get on out, watch the sun go down. Pain in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good, taking it face down. Gotta get on out, watch the sun go down. Pain in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good, taking it face down. Gotta find your own slice of heaven. Gotta get on out, watch the sun go down. Pain in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good, taking it face down.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jason Haas. Welcome to our virtual pickup party for wine club members for the fall of 2020. With me is Neil Collins, executive winemaker and vineyard manager, who many of you know has been hosting these cool Friday evening discussions with winemakers for the last several months. How you doing, Neil?
Good. And you?
Doing good. Just so all of you know, those of you who are joining us, we are both out here at the winery. We're in different places for logistical reasons to make sure that the sound works for both of us. But we're looking forward to it. So obviously, in a normal year, we would be sometime right around now inviting all of our wine club members to come out for a day and welcoming something like 400 or 500 of you here at once. It's 2020. It's not possible. But we feel like we still want to give you a chance to taste through the wines with us, ask questions, and take advantage of some of the cool opportunities that this technology presents. So we're going to try to share. We're trying to share some pictures also, give you a little sense of what's been going on here over the last 6 months, and then taste through the wines. And plus, we've got a guest appearance coming up with Chef Jeff Scott, who's been working in our kitchen, making the whole office smell great for the last several hours. So he'll join in and taste some food pairings for us for the reds and for the whites. We would love this to be interactive. So I see some people already tossing in some comments. That's great. Please continue to do that. We'll answer as many of them as we can. I always feel like these things work best when they're discussions and not lectures anyway. So any other kind of groundwork stuff, Neil, before we jump into an update as to what's been going on?
No, just nice to not see everybody, but be here and be able to do this. It's kind of fun. It's going to be interesting. Obviously, new experience for all of us. But I couldn't agree with Jason more in that interaction questions are where this is at. I mean, Jason and I talk about these wines a lot of the time, most of our lives. So having people ask what they want to hear will be really helpful to us and the flow of this whole evening, I think. So don't be shy. And you're not in the same room as us. So if it's a silly question, you can't be embarrassed, right? So go for it. Now's your chance.
Awesome. Cool. So I think I'd like to start with a little bit about what's been going on here. And obviously, the thing that's probably most top of mind for all of us is that we just finished the 2020 harvest a week ago today. Neil, do you want to start out by giving people your kind of impressions now that we've got a little bit in the rearview mirror?
Sure. Obviously, just like everything else in life this year, it was an interesting one to have a group of people all working closely together in the cellar and worrying about the COVID business, etc. And we took all the precautions that we could. And we're very much an isolated pod, as you are during harvest. I mean, we all come to work and go home tired and go to sleep, I think. So we tried to be safe with masks and distance as much as we could. We work in a very ventilated, aerated environment, and we double check that. That's a great photograph of Bettino in particular. He looks like he's dead. But the harvest in general was great. I mean, it was a different one. Obviously, everyone's going to be wondering about smoke taint, so let's get that out of the way first. Yeah, we certainly thought about it. We had, a few days where it was pretty smoky and hazy. Didn't really frighten us to any great extreme. Throughout harvest, we have smelt no smoke aromas in any of the ferments, which is a good thing. We have tested some wines and received a couple back that had extremely low levels, unperceptible. So it can creep up on you, I guess, but we think we're pretty safe at this point and everything tastes great. The interesting part, perhaps, of the growing season was that, and Jason has a better memory of dates than I do, but there was an incredibly warm, over 100-degree week that broke records everywhere up here, and it definitely changed the feel of some of the grapes. There were some of them got hit harder than others, more red. We had a very low yield because of that. It's a very sensitive grape, it seems, and got a lot of dried berries. Perhaps a little higher pHs in some areas, but in general, it fared really well. And tasting through year, which is always critical. You never know when you have some interns coming in, but it's been really exceptional. We've had a really upbeat, happy team. It's been hard and stressful as it always is, and everyone's had a good attitude the whole way through, and none of them want to leave, which is strange, but a good sign in my opinion. So that was all good. The flow of cellar was excellent. What came in, I was really happy with how the fruit looked. It came in kind of different order than in some years. I think partially for that initial heat spike, but we got a little more heat during the harvest too. In general, tasting through now, which is always an exciting time for me, it's, we've got wines that have been in barrel, red wines, white wines have been in barrel for over a month. So now you're starting to be able to see great character. And I mean, it's early days. I'm not really big on making predictions on a vintage. Of course, it's going to be great. We all know that. But the textures of the wines this year seem really, really cool. Great tannin structures, kind of there and strong, but quite soft. The fruit is interesting. The Syrah is really vibrant fruit. Interesting, a little different than what I'm used to in a very positive way. And the whites are beautiful. Good year for that. So all in all, we've done about a week. We're done harvesting. We're certainly not done. We have a winery full of fermentations of both whites and reds. As you all know, we're a native yeast fermentation house, so things go slowly. Things take their time, and it's how we like it. So we'll be still in the cellar working with our team and interns as well, right up into the end of November. But as an early predictor, I'm excited with it. A couple of standouts, if I'm to say, would be, obviously I'm excited by some of the new grapes. So Terra Noir is looking super cool. So that bodes well for Complice. Vacares, really exciting, very, very vibrant, very structured acidity and tannin. And probably the one that's really getting me most excited right now is the Sanso, which is our second vintage, but it's really cool. It's a really, really aromatic, and it's not super light like a lot of Sanso that I've dealt with. It's got some color and some body to it, but I think it bodes really well for that selection from Beaucastel on this property. So overall, Jason, I'm excited with what I'm seeing in this early stage.
And anybody who's interested in a kind of a numerical look comparison of how this year's numbers compared to recent years, I did a harvest recap blog that I published on Wednesday. And it was really interesting that a lot of the numbers actually looked very much like 2019. It didn't feel in terms of the year a lot like 2019, but in terms of yields and in terms of pH and in terms of sugar, it was very similar. And honestly, that's super encouraging. 2019 was one of the best vintages that any of us have ever been a part of. And if 2020 ends up like 2019, that would be great. Okay, cool.
I always like to read Jason's harvest recap because I'm just kind of coming out of the fray of it, and to look back and see what we've actually done is always kind of cool for me because I don't pay super close attention to all those things at the time, but to come out and kind of see numbers and averages and the things that statistics that Jason does so well is kind of fun for me.
Yeah,
and surprising. Generally, I'm surprised too. It's like I don't think that could be right.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, Neil was not joking about the heat. We had two really big heat spikes where it approached 110 for multiple days. One in mid-August and one in early September. Both August and September were about 25% warmer than normal in terms of degree days, which is a big increase over what are already generally very warm months. But it didn't seem to have any negative impacts on quality. It just accelerated everything. We ended up finishing harvest in 45 days, which is pretty short, and finishing early. I mean, this is supposed to be Harvest Festival weekend in Paso Robles, and not a whole lot of harvesting going on here. So, yeah. And again, if you like that kind of stuff, check out the blog. It's up now.
I think that's funny how that works sometimes. You have those heat spikes and everything stops for a moment, and you think, okay, we got some breathing room, but then 4 days later, everything just accelerates and goes. It's odd, and you always have to keep that in the back of your mind. I think we saw days that were one in the teens, like 114, 115 and stuff, which is crazy
Yeah,
hot.
it's nuts. Cool. Okay, so I'm sure people are interested about the fires. The nearest fires to us were in Monterey County, about 60, 70 miles from us. We're grateful that they weren't closer. Our thoughts are with all of our colleagues and friends and compatriots who have been dealing with this much more directly up in Monterey County and Santa Cruz and Napa and Sonoma. But there was a real kind of break in Santa Barbara County and San Luis Obispo County where the fires weren't that close, and so the smoke was much higher up. There were some crazy days where the sun never came out because it was overcast, but it wasn't overcast with clouds. It was overcast with smoke. So again, if you like those kinds of apocalyptic pictures, we have a bunch of them up on the blog. Okay, so our big news in the vineyard is that in August we got our regenerative organic certification, and that's something that we've been working on for a couple of years. We've been part of the pilot program to help get this international standard up and going for the wine community. And if you've been hearing about it, it may sound kind of sprawling and all encompassing, and that's one of the things that we really love about it. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 2 months trying to break it down into component pieces for people. So I'm going to do my best to do that quickly here. But basically, it starts with organic. It starts with the elimination of chemicals that the National Organic Program standards dictate. It works in the focus on soil health and biodiversity that you get from biodynamics, but separates it from a lot of the more mystical cycles of the moon pieces. It adds resource use reduction. So you can see a picture here of one of our dry farm vineyard blocks that we call Scruffy Hill. So it's really working to get farms to use less water, to use less energy. So the fact that we've got 3 banks of solar panels and have a 4th one going in is something that it really encourages. And then it adds a farm worker fairness pillar and an animal welfare pillar. So I think the farm worker fairness piece is really about incorporating your crew and the ideas that they have, making sure they're being paid a living wage, making sure that their working environment is safe, but mostly that it's a collaborative effort, that you're not dictating from the top down, that you're working with and alongside your vineyard crew. So that was a super exciting piece for us. And then that animal welfare piece, where you're making sure that the animals you have on your farm they have the 5 freedoms: freedom to express normal behavior, freedom from pain, freedom from fear. So it's a way, I think, of trying to craft a gold standard for farming that is bigger than the world of wine. And again, wine is just one of the products that there is a regenerative organic standard for. This was originally put together by Patagonia, or at least the funding for it was originally kicked in by Patagonia. But there are standards for fibers, there's standards for livestock, there's standards for row crops and for orchards. And we were proud to have been asked to be the winery that helps incorporate those standards into the world of wine. So we've been working on that for the last 2 years. We got our certification in August, and we're proud to be the first winery in the world helping lead this charge. And I based on the interest we've been getting from other wineries, I very much hope that we won't be the only one for long. What did I miss in the explanation of regenerative organic, Neil? How do you explain it to people?
I mean, I think that was pretty thorough from my standpoint. I just don't think it can be understated what an important certification this could be and will be, and that it's totally global. It's not just here. We're a very small part of this, and we're really lucky to be involved in getting into it. And I've been part here at Tablas Creek of certifying organic and then certifying biodynamic and then doing this, and all those things are intense and all those things are great and should be supported and encouraged. But this was a whole nother level. I mean, a whole week of training with our vineyard crew and getting them on board with the program, which at first they were a bit skeptical, but by the end they were fully invested, and it's involved them in the things. One of the greatest things that came from it for me is they have a much stronger voice here, not wanting more money and all the usual business, but changing ideas that we have and understanding better why we're doing what we're doing, and being able to have an opinion and change that. And that's been huge for me to see that and hear their voice more loudly. It's just a really, really intense, and it's important. I think it's saving the planet by farming is a huge thing. You know, their tagline is "Farm like the world depends on it," and it does. So for us, we can do our small bit and promote it, and hopefully it spreads. You know, remembering when Tablas Creek came into town, there was no one farming organically, and now there's a lot of that. So hopefully our small contribution will have a global impact eventually. You know, if not today, then tomorrow for sure. And I couldn't be prouder of the work everyone's done to get us here. You know, I mean, not just the vineyard crew and everybody supporting, but Jordy has done a huge part of the legwork. Of course, there's paperwork involved, which he spent a lot of time in front of his computer, which maybe he doesn't love, but he's so passionate about it and realizes that it's such a good movement moving forward that hopefully we can get more and more people involved. I think it's great. I'm so proud to be a part of it.
And if you have not yet read the piece that Jordy wrote for the blog when we got our regenerative organic certification, you should. You'll come out fired up and want to change the world. It's a great piece.
I think if I can just throw in, these things evolve in such an interesting way. This all started from me going down and doing a dinner in Ventura, representing the first dinner in the United States serving biodynamically certified lamb. So that was first for us. So I went down proud to do that. As it happened, the owner of Patagonia was there at the dinner, and I ended up spending probably an unfair amount of time chatting to him. And all he wanted to talk about was farming and how the world could be changed by farming and how he was going to do this certification. And I subsequently went and toured the facility in Ventura and became really a fan of what Patagonia represent, and said we'd like to be part of it. We couldn't at the time because someone else was involved in the winery position, but they dropped out and we were the first phone call. So all these things, how they build on each other is super cool. The lambs, Biodynamic brought the lambs to the property. The lambs led us to ROC, which I think is a really great thing. I mean, you take one step at a time and you never know where it ends up.
Super cool. So Richard's comment that ROA sounds great, but he wonders how many small wineries can afford it, is, I think it's a relevant thing. And this is a case where we felt like we were already most of the way there, because we had our organic and biodynamic certifications. We already had the animal program up and going. And if we can use our own position and our own influence to help work through some of the challenges and troubleshoot some of the certification issues so that more wineries can be a part of it, it's something that we're happy and proud to be able to do.
And it can certainly be a gradual process too. You don't have to jump into this full-fledged and go for everything we did. We went full bore because we were on the pilot. So it was important that we looked at every aspect. But what it's set up to do is you get in and you evolve year to year. You assess yourself and they assess you, and then you take a next step. You don't have to be in a hurry with this. It's moving towards the goal is the important thing. I mean, yes, It's great that you get the great standard, but it's the goal of getting there. That's what's important. People understanding it and wanting to be a part of it and moving their process little by little. I mean, it's not a hurry. This farming's a very long-term goal. It's a generational thing. So just getting involved and getting on the first rung and working your way up and eventually getting there. That's the plan. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. A few other bits of news that are exciting. We harvested our first ever crop of Muscardin, 130 pounds in all, which will make something like 10 gallons of wine. There's the first bin. You can see that the fruit barely covers the bottom of the bin. This is not a large crop, but it's a beginning, and it's a beginning of the 14th and final of the Beaucastel Chateauneuf grapes to make it into production here at Tablas Creek. So we'll have enough to hopefully ferment a couple of carboys of this and know what it tastes like, and we'll have more next year because these grafts will be a year older, and we grafted another 750 vines into the vineyard this year. So it's kind of the culmination of really my dad's dream that he started in 89 and then kind of kicked up to the next level in 2003 when he decided to bring in all the rest of the obscure Chateauneuf grapes like Muscardin, where there's not even 50 acres of it in the world.
13 years in quarantine, right?
Yeah, I went into quarantine in 2003 and came out in 2017. So 14 years in quarantine. Crazy.
It smells great in the fermenter, by the way. That's not its fermenter. That was what it was picked into, but it's smelling all 130 pounds. It's smelling great.
That's the fermenter. So you can see that's basically on a forklift. It's about 1.5 feet in diameter, and 4 feet tall.
And it's about 1/5 full.
We have seen a string of really cool press. I don't know how many of you have seen this out there in the world, but the regenerative organic thing. I mean, we're convinced that this is national news. This is a big deal. So it was exciting to see the Washington Post write about it, the LA Times, the Napa Valley Register just this past week, our local NPR station, and we have more stuff coming out. So keep an eye open for an article on ROC in Bloomberg and another one in Wine Enthusiast that should be out before the end of the year. We also have some fun news in that we just found out that we're one of the top 100 wineries for the second year in a row in wine and spirits, and that we have a wine in the Wine Enthusiasts top 100 cellar selections for 2020. That's the 2017 Esprit Blanc. I saw a comment go by a little bit earlier that somebody had opened the 2017 Esprit Blanc and it was tasting great, and I totally agree. It's tasting great right now.
Good.
So I saw a question from Hal asking why quarantine takes so long. I'll answer that quickly because we're going to move on from this. Basically, they have to test for viruses, which takes a couple of years to test for all of the viruses that they need to test for. It's a certain amount of growing time per virus. And then they need to try to clean it up, where they take a little slice off of the newest growth and then grow it out to enough to then graft and test again. And that takes another year and a half, and then another 2 years for the testing. And if it fails that, then it's another, what's called meristem cultivation, that little slice, grow it out, and 2 more years of testing. So basically, if everything goes right, you get your grapes out, your vines out in 2 years. If it fails that, it takes 5. Fails that, it takes 8, 11, 14. And Muscardin failed 4 rounds of quarantine testing, which is why it took 14 years for us to get it. Thank you to the Foundation Plant Services at UC Davis who are doing all of that work.
You got more patience than I do.
So just a quick reminder that we do these sorts of one of the fun things that we've started to do over the last 6 months have been these sorts of live virtual events. So Neil's Facebook tastings every other Friday. I do an Instagram live broadcast every other Wednesday. And we've each been inviting guests on. I love tuning into Neil's just because he always has some of my winemaking icons from California on as his guests. So who are to give just list off a few of the highlights of the people who you've gotten a chance to talk to.
I mean, certainly last week Steve Edmonds was huge for me, and I think the week before, 2 weeks before, was Bob Lindquist, and before that it started with more local folks and younger, less established, like Ryan Pease from Pacer Terre, and some of our own cellar crew also, and it's just fun to speak to some of these people. I kept sort of talking about this with Steve Edmonds, is I see Steve Edmonds and I see Bob Lindquist and have done for a couple of decades, but it's always at tastings and you can't really have a conversation because you're there to do a job and the customers are more important than our chatting. So to actually be able to speak one-on-one and have people interject questions was great. And I learned an immense amount and feel that I have a stronger rapport with those guys. And we did a couple of great ones with young ladies from down in Santa Ynez, Angela from A Tribute to Grace and Jessica from Story of Soil, who are 2 newer winemakers, I guess you'd say, who are super inspirational to me, particularly on the Grenache front. So it's been really fun. It's been really fun to chat to people that you just don't do in the normal world. You're under the belief you're just too busy.
No, it's been fun, and I know I'm not on the road, so I have the time to explore some of these sorts of things, and some of them, obviously, there've been frustrations, but there've also been these cool rewards to having to slow down and stay put and figure out how else you make connections with people. I should note, if you have not yet come to our tasting room, we reopened our tasting room after 3 months closed in mid-June. It's a little different than it was before. All of our tastings are seated tastings outdoors, distanced at tables. Everything is done in flights. So we bring everything to the tables in these little touchless carriers, and then you have the whole flight in front of you. We put some other safety procedures in place, like extra cleaning, and we're wearing masks, and we ask the guests to wear masks too until they're seated at their tables. But we've been really excited with the results and the response that we've gotten. Essentially, what we've done is we've upgraded everyone who comes for a tasting to what would have been one of our kind of premium experiences you had to pay more for, one of our seated flight tastings. So that's been really cool. The response that we've gotten has been really cool. It is worth noting, if you're planning to come out, we have a capacity that's limited by the 14 tables we have on our patio. So we're doing it all by reservation, and it's been an eye opener for us. So if you are planning to come out, note that on weekends we're booking 2 to 3 weeks out. So please plan accordingly. We hope that we will be able to welcome more people. But we're planning to be in basically this environment through the winter. So we've invested in heaters and some more covers. We'll be outside, and we're confident we can have a great experience. But just plan ahead. Okay. So, and then finally, before we jump into the tasting, I just want to say once more how grateful that I am for the support that we've seen from you all. Both while we were closed, in terms of people calling up and placing orders, since we reopened, continuing to call up and place orders, but also coming out to see us. If you had told me at the beginning of the shutdowns that we would have made it through in as good a shape as we have, and seen the outpouring of support that we have, I would have said that you were dreaming. So I could not be more grateful and appreciative. So thank you.
And same for me. It keeps me gainfully employed, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for keeping allowing us to keep our entire team,
Entire staff
shutdown.
Yeah, which is great, and that's credit to a lot of work from everybody here in the background, not the ones that sit doing tastings on computers. The people that are doing the work in the background that get no credit. Those people have been working incredibly hard.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Excellent. So I think we should jump in and start tasting some wines. Rather than have me play the lead on this, I'm going to let Neil take the lead, and I'm gonna play second fiddle. So, Neil, take it away.
See how that works.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a joint effort, I think. We bring different things to this table. So Grenache Blanc 2019. I mean, Jason spoke of the vintage a little bit. It was a great vintage for us across the board, I believe. Grenache Blanc, I always say, and hopefully those that have been listening for a bit don't get bored with it, but out of all the varieties that were brought into Pass Robles by Jason's dad and the Pran family, Grenache Blanc is maybe one of the bigger surprises at how well it actually did here. I mean, it's certainly one of, if not the largest planted white in France itself, but you rarely see it by itself, or it rarely gets any recognition. So I don't think anyone, of course, I didn't have a clue what it was, but the Prens certainly did, and Bob certainly did. And I don't think they anticipated that it was going to show as well as it has. And I just think it flourishes in this climate, on this soil. And this year was same again. You know, we got a really, really nice crop. I mean, a decent amount of fruit. We dropped a lot of fruit, but we still got a lot of fruit. And it was really high quality. It holds beautiful acidity, and there is no great variety for me out there that displays the terroir of Tablas Creek better than this particular variety. I think the limestone, I can see it. I may be the only one, but I can clearly see the soils. I can smell them in this wine every year. As with all our wines, you know, I mean, I don't think I can say it enough times that the mission that was handed me by Bob and the Prens when I started working with them was to make wines that are reflections of this piece of land that they searched so hard to find. So within all that, this is where all the organic farming and the biodynamic farming and the regenerative now comes, is to have a purity of fruit. And the dry farming is just another level of that, in my opinion. And so when we come into the winery, and I'll just do this fleetingly because some people may not have heard it, but we're all natural ferments, native yeast. We don't inoculate with yeast as a lot of people do. Native malolactic fermentations, a lot of neutral oak. You won't taste a lot of new oak on any of these wines. I mean, maybe the exceptions would be a little bit on the Roussanne and the Esprit Blanc, and Syrah sometimes, just a touch, but very, 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 very light-handed. And that's all part of the same program. The nuances of all the farming we do and the native yeast and the way we choose to make wines have to be guarded. So to slam it with 50% new oak, though I'm not saying I don't like wines that come out of oak. It's just not what our mission is. So we try and be as delicate as we can. Grenache Blanc would have been fermented in stainless steel for the most part, tank fermented, whole cluster press, so juice straight to a tank. Not all of it. Some of it will be fermented in foudre also. We have older white foudres, which impart no oak, but have a great roundness they give. This year, we're also doing it in a concrete egg. It'll be in barrels. It'll be in pungeons. And then when we come to put our assemblages together, we get to pick from all those lots, from all those different fermentation and aging vessels, and create the various wines that we create. And of course, starting with the Esprit. But with the Grenache Blanc, I think my goal certainly, and when I sit down to the tasting panel, which is always a great moment, I think we all bring a slightly different idea of what we're looking for. But for me, with Grenache Blanc, it's a real purity that I want. I want to see the bright acidity. I want to see that little bit of tannin structure that Grenache Blanc brings, and I want to see that terroir. I want to taste that kind of anisey, limestoney character that it brings to the table. That's what I'm looking for. So vibrancy, brightness, crispness, and a kind of a window to the vineyard, if you will, is where I go. And I always love structure in wines. That's my mind as we taste, and those that have tasted with me will know I'm more about tannin and acid and structure and balance and the feel of the wine than I am about gardenias and white flowers, perhaps. But there's others here that are better at that than I am, perhaps.
we definitely have people who are about gardenias and the like.
And I think that's one of the great things about what we do, and having a blending table that encompasses myself and Jason and Chelsea Franchi and Craig Ham and the rest of the team. There's a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different palates and ideas and thoughts. We're all there to make the same wine, and we all understand the history that is Tablas Creek, but everyone brings something different to the table. And the same comes when we sit down to do tasting notes, and Jason, Chelsea, and I sit down and talk. We have very different ways of tasting and describing wines, and when it's put into one paragraph for you, that encompasses what the group of us. And I think that's a great reflection of Tablas Creek for me.
I would love to answer Richard's question, because I think it's going to inform this wine, but also the rest of the wines that we're going to be tasting. So I'm going to give a super quick kind of rundown of what the impact is of the last three vintages on the wines. So 17 was very much this classic Californian vintage, lush and luscious, pretty juicy, really appealing, friendly, outgoing wines. 18 was a vintage which felt much more like a cool climate vintage. The temperatures were actually more average than they were cool, but just the way that the cool came and the times that it came meant that the things that we picked came in with this really nice brightness and freshness and minerality. It's kind of high toned, bright, spicy mineraliness was what came through in the wines. And then 19 for me was a blockbuster. It was a little bit lower yielding than we've seen since the drought. Everything was incredibly intensely what it is. So Grenache Blanc was very Grenache Blanc in 2019. Roussanne was very Roussanne in 2019. So really well-defined personalities, great intensity, but also good acids. So I think 19 has the potential to be one of the great vintages we've ever seen. But that's kind of my quick breakdown of how those 3 years compare.
There is a little bit of weight to this Grenache Blanc too, which there's years when it's a bit more austere than this, but I kind of like it. It carries it well.
And I think Grenache Blanc it sort of breaks that normal paradigm where you can often think of white grapes as somewhere on this line between like rich and heavy and powerful, like an oaky Chardonnay, and then like bright and lean and fresh and light in body. Grenache Blanc is bright, but it's got a lot of body also, so it's kind of got both. It's not really on that scale in the way that a lot of other wines are, and that's something that I always look for, is that kind of textural component that Neil was talking about, and still those bright acids and that kind of play back and forth between weight and freshness.
I mean, I guess you you go back to the statement I made earlier, however true or false that may have been, that it's one of the largest planted white grapes in France, there's a reason for that. It fills a lot of roles. Surely one of them is because it's a great producer, but it's beyond that. It can fill a lot of roles. It can bring acid to the table. It can bring great structure to the table. And I think that's why there's so much of it. It's why is there so much Chardonnay planted everywhere? Because it's versatile. It's not as versatile as Grenache Blanc as a blender, though. That's the thing. Grenache Blanc can play by itself, but when we get to the Esprit, to see how it plays in that wine is also important. It can play a supporting role as well as a leading role for us, at least, and for California for sure. For West Paso, without question. I mean, all the Grenache Blancs that I taste from this region. And let's remember, before Tablas Creek, there was no Grenache Blanc in this region. So
or anywhere else in California, every
kudos,
vineyard is from Tablas Creek.
yeah, kudos to Haas and Pren for bringing it in, and it shows well as a lead player. I'm a huge fan.
Okay, let's use that as a segue to move on to the Cotes de Tablas Blanc, because we've talked about what it can do on its own. This is the Cotes de Tablas Blanc. It plays in a secondary role.
Give me a moment.
Yeah, me too. Don't mind me.
So let's talk about Cotes de Tablas a little bit, which is fun. When was the first vintage of Cotes de Tablas? Probably
02.
2001? 02? Okay. And always based in Viognier. For those of you that don't know, we always base this guy in Viognier. The Esprit always based in Roussanne. Viognier being some of the original plantings on the property, planted back in 1992. And we haven't really planted a whole lot more. We about doubled it in probably 99, in that realm, 99, 2000. We have, I don't know what acreage, 6 acres, something like that. And always the first to ripen, always the first to be picked. We tried to pick our Viognier a little earlier. We're not looking for the big, round, showy Viognier that you can get in California and a lot of people really love. We're looking for a little more austerity, a little more mineral character if we can. So we do pick it fairly early. And it is always, I don't know, in this vintage, 44%. So it's a major player in this one. Though I haven't tasted it yet, but I remember in our tastings, we felt that the Marsanne had a fairly strong impact on this wine. I haven't gone to this yet, but Marsanne was planted same time, same thing, about 2 acres. So it's been around a while. We don't do a varietal Viognier every year, but we do when we love it and we have enough of it. And I think Cotes de Tablas fills a great role for us. The Esprit is great when it's released, but for my money, it's even better with some time on it when the Roussanne has time to age a little bit. The Cotes de Tablas comes out the gate strong and is ready to go, and the beautiful aromas and flavor profiles of Viognier are so easy and so pretty. And then you bring in the rest, the Marsanne, the Grenache Blanc doing its thing, and I think that's a great picture of Grenache Blanc again in this wine, the acidity that it brings. And how much Roussanne have we got? 8% Roussanne. Roussanne's a bit player in this one, as it should be.
So to answer
again,
the question,
been fermented in everything because there's every variety. So if there's a vessel in this cellar, some of it's been in there.
So Viognier is always the lead in the Cote Blanc, and about half the years where there's really good natural acidity, we prefer to have Marsanne play a secondary role because it plays very nicely with Viognier. In years where acid's a little lower, both Viognier and Marsanne can be low acid, and so there are years where we need more Grenache Blanc in order to make the wine balanced. But in the years where there's really good natural acidity, we would prefer to have Marsanne be the number 2 rather than Grenache Blanc, to have it go Viognier, Marsanne, Grenache Blanc, and then Roussanne. Doesn't work every year. There are years where we need to have more Grenache Blanc, or the Grenache Blanc just shows so well in the tastings that it forces its way in. But this sort of blend where Marsanne is in the kind of 30% range, for me, it's kind of my favorite profile of Cote Blanc.
I think this balance of Viognier and Marsanne, and this just tasting it right now, is really, really nice. You feel them both equally. They're hard to separate. I really like the way that's showing. And again, the little acidity from Grenache Blanc.
And Marsanne also ages really beautifully. I find that this wine goes through phases where, like, for 6 months, it'll really taste like Viognier. And then the Viognier will go into the background a little bit. And then it'll taste like really like Marsanne for 6 months. And then that'll go into the background. The Viognier will come back out. And they kind of weave themselves back and forth depending on time and bottle. So I agree. When we first bottled this, we were both really struck by the Marsanne character. Now they feel equal, to me, but I would not be surprised if I open this in a few months and the Viognier is up singing proudly in the lead because
It is
move around.
it is gaining ground for sure. I think maybe it's important to me to have people realize and understand a little bit that we're learning a lot of these varieties along with everybody else that are tasting with us. I mean, it's not like the Prennes knew what these varieties were in the south of France, but no one knew what these varieties would do here. So the most of them, we were the first to be growing them. They were the first, certainly the first on the west of Pass Robles. So there's been an evolution of here of how do we make this? You know, how do we differ the production of Marsanne over Viognier? What do we need to do differently? When do we pick it? How do we farm it? That's something that doesn't. I mean, you get one shot a year, and then you have to make those small adjustments. You know, as Jean-Pierre Perrin once said to me, "Is we learn this much every year, and we hope we get to use it again one day." And it's a bit like that, particularly with the farming. But that's been a great evolution. In Marsanne, we struggled. I remember your dad and I and you arguing, and he wanted to tear it out every year. And now I think it's become a really valuable player in what we do. And I would hate to see it gone.
Totally agree. I think we should plant more.
Yeah, well, I would like to do that in a different spot.
Yep.
We'll get to that. We are doing a lot of planting next year, which is really exciting. Really. Well, we talked about that yesterday, and it's been a while, so it's going to be great to get some new serious blocks in the ground. We planted a lot of the brand new varieties in half-acre plots, but we haven't done serious plantings for a while, so it's exciting.
Yeah, and we'll have like 15 acres or so that'll go into the ground over the winter. That's
At least, yeah, maybe a little touch more than that. It should be great. Anyway, back to it. What are your thoughts on this particular wine? It's got kind of a flinch.
I love the exuberance on the nose, and then the fact that on the palate it has tension and freshness and minerality because it smells like it's going to be that kind of big, dense, rich, maybe a little heavy kind of Viognier character, and then on the palate for me that limestone minerality and that kind of bright citrus, like preserved lemon Grenache Blanc character really comes out and just asserts control.
It does have a nice silkiness to it, and it's a nice character through the palate. You don't get quite the tannin you get from the Grenache Blanc, which is nice. I mean, it's such an approachable wine for me. I always forget about the Cotes de Tablas. You know, when I reach for the cellar, I'm always thinking Esprit or Roussanne or Grenache Blanc off them. And then you have a Cotes de Tablas, and you go, oh yeah, I shouldn't forget about this so much. You know, I mean, we have a lot of wines to choose from. So
It's like visiting an old friend.
exactly.
Okay, a couple quick questions to answer, and then I think we should move on to the Esprit Blanc.
Okay.
So we didn't ever answer Olivier's question about how old the Grenache Blanc vines are. We've planted multiple times, so they're not all the same age, but the oldest ones were planted in 94, 95?
94, 95, probably 94, 95 for sure. That's the most northerly planting that we call the VFOV. And then down on the Nipple Flat, that was planted in 2000. And then 2006 or 2008 was Crosshairs.
Right. So
been a few
got a
plantings.
good amount of Grenache Blanc. Pretty happy with the quantity that we've got. There's some other ones that we feel like we don't have enough Mourvèdre. We'll talk about that when we get to the Esprit. But then the couple of questions from Hal asking about how many plantable acres we still have. We bought a new piece of property in 2011 that had about 60 plantable acres on it, and we've just scratched the surface on planting it. So that's basically what we have to grow into. But we've also been regenerating some older blocks that we feel like have fallen off in recent years or been missing a ton of vines or had virus or trunk disease. So what we're going to be planting this winter is going to be a combination of some of the blocks on our original property um, that we pulled out in the last 3 or 4 winters, and then some on the new piece that we call Jewel Ridge.
And that piece of property is, it's one of the frustrations, I guess, of an impatient human, is that Jewel Ridge is the most exciting piece of this property to me. And to be planting the whole thing, particularly the piece we're working on right now, is a 30-acre hill right in the middle, rocky, and I'm gonna get to plant it for sure. But just like Scruffy Hill, our other great dry farm, it's when it's 20 years old is when it's really going to shine, and Jason's kids will be inheriting that beauty, which hopefully I'll still be around drinking it, but I don't think I'll be doing much planting it. But that's one of the excitements of doing this. It's a long road between planting a vineyard, and you get excited about the early vintages, of course, but in the back of your head that 10, 15, 20 years is just going to get better and better, particularly with the dry farm stuff, I feel.
Awesome. Okay, let's taste the Esprit Blanc. So I see Robbie posted a comment that he's already drunk 1.5 bottles of the Esprit Blanc, waiting for us to get to it.
Attaboy.
Bravo.
How was it, Robbie? Maybe you should talk about it.
Yeah, seriously. Tell us what we're tasting.
Tell us what it shows. So Esprit, obviously, Tablas Creek, when they came here, they were going to make one red, one white. That was the goal. That was the mission statement, which has long since been cast aside. But if that had stayed the case, this is the wine that we would have made, almost certainly. Probably would have had a bit of Viognier in it too, but based in Roussan. And again, Roussan was great. We had to learn here because it had not been planted here before. And Ian's bringing me food. Look at that. I never do that on Facebook at home. So Roussan, and for me, it was a whole new thing. And of course, Boxtel's so famous for the incredible VA vine, but you don't start working with 80-year-old grapevines. So it's been another evolution. More food, chef. Thank you.
Yeah. I know. It's very exciting.
Good to be me right now. So that evolution for me has been interesting, and probably the most exciting thing for me with these wines is just how well they age. Literally yesterday at lunchtime in the cellar, we opened a 2002 that I had in my stash, and yeah, it tasted like it had some age on it, but it was just beautiful. Just beautiful. I don't remember the makeup of that wine, but the way that the Roussan evolves, I don't love farming it. It's a hard grape to farm here, but when you get some age on it, it's just so beautiful. And then, of course, again, the Grenache Blanc in the Esprit brings in that vibrant, beautiful acidity and a bit of structure, because Roussan here can be a bit, I don't want to say flat, but it can be a bit round. It can lack in that structure, which Grenache Blanc brings, and then Picpoul also brings that to play. Always a great blending session for sure. The Esprit will have seen a little bit of new wood. Most of the new wood that we ferment, the only new wood that white wine goes into will be Roussan. That's the only grape we put in any new cooperage. We use barrels that are very gentle. They're long air dried, at least 4 years air dried, a lighter toast. So it's not like the Chardonnay oak that we've all tasted and know and like. It's a different reflection, soft. And so a little bit will make that into the Esprit. But as we're selecting barrels to go to the Esprit, we tend more towards acidity and structure and brightness by itself without the influence of the barrel. And so when we're selecting individual barrels, that's where we're going.
So the blend on this is 66% Roussan, just kind of a normal, kind of an average amount of Roussan for us for this wine. 21% Grenache Blanc, 8% Picpoul Blanc, and then for the second vintage we had one lot each of Picardin. It's 3% Picardin, and 2% Claret Blanche that got selected for this. And it's one of the things that we're really excited about, is getting a chance to incorporate these new grapes that have just come into production in the last decade into this wine. Beaucastel is famous for using all of the Chateauneuf varieties, and I think that's always been one of our goals, to make a wine that does have all of the grapes, or at least the red Esprit with all of the red grapes and a white Esprit with all of the white grapes. And we're getting close to this. And Richard's question is absolutely right. So it turns out, no, not every year we would like them to, but if they're not right, we won't do it. I think only one of the two made it in 2019. I can't remember which one. One of Claret and Picardin, but not the other. Made it in. And then, again, we're gonna make the best wine that we can make. But obviously, if we can make the best wine that we can make, and it has all of them, it's going to make us happy.
I think that's a couple of important moments in the evolution, of the Esprit. Was in, I think it was 2004. It was in that region. Up until that point, it had been Viognier, and then Picpoul arrived on the scene, the first harvest of Picpoul, and we blind tasted with Viognier, with Picpoul, and we all unanimously, Francois Perrin was here for that one, and we all unanimously enjoyed the Picpoul rather than the Viognier in that blend. And we all kind of, I think, secretly wanted to, because Viognier is not one of the Chateauneuf grapes, Picpoul is. And the same thing happened again when we sat down to taste the Picardin and the Claret Blanche. I can tell you for myself, I wanted that to be the one we liked, but we did it blind. We did a blind tasting with 4 different Esprits. One of them was that one. And again, it was unanimous. Everyone at the table chose that wine to be their favorite. So it's done on the merit of what it brings, and it will be every time. I really want Bourbon to be part of this blend, and part of that is I know that Jason's dad, Bob, it was probably the white grape he was most excited in this new batch, and I'd like him to be right.
Ooh, ever think of a Panoply Blanc? Yes, we've talked about it for the last couple of years. We just have not yet identified lots that we felt like were so special that they called out to make it. But that's definitely in my medium-term plans, not even long-term plans. Something hopefully in the next 5 years.
It's always kind of a discussion of, if we made it, what would it be? That's kind of that discussion. I mean, we're not going to throw a bunch of toasty new oak on it and call it Panoply. Obviously, that would not be our style. Do you do a very ripe Roussanne all in stainless steel? Probably not. So it's, for me anyway, and we've talked about this since the beginning of Panoply. Like, if we were to do a Panoply Blanc, what would it be? So I think the introduction of these new varieties might bring something to light. I think the age of some of the older Roussanne and the old Grenache Blanc, the OV that we talked of earlier, has been showing better and better in our blind tastings every year. And it came in this year. It's just beautiful. So that, that would be strange, but that will be a component of it for sure. Because we always talk so much about age of vine and how important that is. And it's really great when you sit there and you see it evolving. That's a cool thing for me.
Cool. I think we should.
That sounded like a politician. We didn't answer that at all, really, did we?
We would like. We don't know what it would look like yet. I think we should get Jeff on to talk about this, because I see people commenting already, and I've just tasted it, and it was amazing. Hi, Jeff. I can't hear you. You seem to be on mute.
That's a great thing, knowing Jeff. I wish I could mute him more. Really good.
It's so good. I'm going to need more little toasts. I don't have enough toasts for the amount of goat cheese that I've got.
It's the greatest flaw in restaurants, not giving you enough little toast pieces. There's always too much pate and not enough toast. This is smelling lovely. Roussanne's really showing well in this to me.
Roussanne shows great. And It's Roussanne, but it's Roussanne with all of these high notes. I mean, I think of Roussanne as being usually so much base notes. It's rich, it's dense, it's textured. And this is Roussanne with those kind of bright little sparkly notes on top also.
Kind of citrusy notes and whatever this is Jeff cooked here really plays well with that.
Looks like we're reconnecting, Jeff.
Oh,
Hello,
there he
Jeff.
is.
Hey,
Hello, Jeff. You're back.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Again,
Can you hear us?
Great. I can, and I don't think it was fair you were talking about not enough toasts while I was muted.
I was taking my chance, Jeffrey, while you were muted. You do the same.
Yeah, I would, absolutely. Well, the wine tastes great, that's for sure. So the first pairing
Tell
that
us
I kind
about
of
this
came up
first
with.
dish.
Okay, the first dish is something. First of all, something that you can do at home while you're entertaining. We make it quite often, and it's quite easy to do because it's something that you just put into a casserole dish and put under the broiler. By the time it comes out, you have plenty of little toasts around the table, and your guests are able to enjoy it. It's a lemon and goat cheese gratin. And what we do is we fold lemon zest, a little bit of garlic, a hint of cayenne pepper, and a nice goat cheese together. Put it into a gratiné dish, and all we do is put it underneath the broiler. When it comes out of the broiler, it's bubbly with a little bit of color on it. Finish it with some nice quality olive oil, some chive, and a little bit of basil. And I just tasted it with the wine as well, and I thought that citrusy quality, along with the fattiness of the goat cheese, was really great with the wine.
Yeah, with the Roussanne, perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a great pair.
Did you say the Roussanne is one of the wines that sees a little bit of newer oak, or?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Not so much in this Esprit here, but the 100% Roussanne will see more. It's still very, very little. I mean, it's compared to most wineries, it's a minuscule quantity.
Sure. I love this dish.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I love this dish because quite often when we're doing a white wine pairing, I would say maybe 90% of the time we're eating a chilled food, chilled seafood or vegetable dish. And so I think that one of the great things about pairing it with Tablas Creek wines is that the crispness of the white wine comes out, and the white wine becomes refreshing against the warm goat cheese. And that's a pairing that you don't think about quite often, is warm foods with white wines. And so it's light, citrusy, a hint of garlic in the back to give it a little bit of earthiness, and then it's really refreshing with the wine. A great way to start a meal.
Have you got the wine there with you?
I do.
Well, what's your impression? Give us a little chef's eye view.
Well, I have the Esprit Blanc with me.
Good.
that's what we have to do.
Okay,
Why would you have anything else, Jeffrey, than the?
I don't know. Well, I was hoping for the Panoply Blanc.
Well, all in good time.
Get in line.
When you start doing more toast, we'll start doing Panoply Blanc.
Okay. The wine is beautiful. It's got a lot of depth to it in texture, I feel, but the palate is still very light. I don't sense any oak on it at all, really. Very, very little, honestly. But it's a beautiful blend. Is it predominantly Roussanne, or is it predominantly, what is the blend on it?
It's 66% Roussanne, 21 Grenache Blanc, 8 Picpoul Blanc, 3 Picardin, and 2 Claret Blanche.
I had a bottle of Claret Blanche not too long ago, and I thought it was lovely.
It's really.
Yeah.
You know what's tasting? I tasted yesterday the 2020 Picardin out of barrel, and it's just beautiful right now.
Wow.
It's almost like Sauvignon Blanc at the moment, which is weird because that's not how it ends up. But it just one of those things you taste, and it's just so pretty and vibrant.
That would be a nice pairing with this goat cheese dish too, with the grassy kind of component of a Sauvignon Blanc, possibly with the goat cheese and the citrus.
Well, we don't make Sauvignon Blanc, so we don't want to talk about that at all, Jeffrey.
Yeah. I wanted to mention for anybody that's making this dish that it's important to buy a microplaner when you zest your lemon for it, because if you use a grater or zest it with a peeler and dice it up, you'll get a bit too much pith in it, a bit too much of the white part, and when heat gets to that, it becomes a bit bitter.
What's a microplaner?
A microplaner is a great investment. It's a fancy zester right now. You can use it for cheeses, for zesting items. You can use it to grate nutmeg, and it creates a really fine kind of a zest into your foods. Everybody, you don't have a microplaner, Neil?
I probably do, Jeffrey, but I just don't know what it's called. I thought it was a fine grater.
I'm writing it down on the Christmas list for you right now.
We use ours. We have one, and we use it all the time.
Do you? Yeah, absolutely. And isn't it great? It doesn't get too far into the citrus rind, and so you can have a lot of uses for it. But again, a super way to entertain and very simple to do at home. There's only just a couple ingredients in the dish, and
where's the goat cheese from?
Easy to do.
Where'd you get your goat cheese? Do you have a goat cheese preference for this dish?
I like the goat cheese that's being made. I like Cypress Grove's goat cheeses very much. Mm-hmm. But locally here in Paso, Central Coast Creamery, Reggie there is now making some great fresh goat cheese. And he hadn't for a while, but for the last year or so, he's made some great ones.
Well, I think there's a lot of goat cheese production going on, particularly around this state. I mean, if you can find your local goat cheese somewhere, that would be fantastic, right? I mean, what can be better?
No, it's the best way to go. And I mean, even years ago when you were able to get it unpasteurized, it even has more thyme and herbal character to it. But there are some great new local producers here in Paso that are coming up with fantastic goat cheeses. And when you have a good goat cheese, you know it when it has a bit of thyme, a bit of lavender in it, because it's really picking up the terroir the same way that the grape does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool. Okay, Jeff, we are going to move on to the reds, and we will see you in 3 wines.
All right, good. We'll see you then.
Put your microplaner away.
Okay.
Cool.
I'm gonna have to stand up to get to the next wine.
I believe we have a guest. We have a guest who we are expecting to welcome on to talk about the Grenache. If our
I wasn't informed about guests.
I believe that our producer Ian has Chelsea on the line to come and talk about Grenache.
Who's Chelsea?
Yeah, I know. We've forgotten all about her. She's been gone for 2 months on maternity leave, and we've written her out of the production.
Let's just hope and pray the shepherd isn't with her.
They are not joined at the hip.
No. Chelsea's happy for that.
So why don't Ian is arranging that connection. Oh, there she is.
Oh, there she is.
Hey, Chelsea.
Chelsea.
How are you?
Good. I'm sitting in your studio.
I noticed.
I wanted to wear a stupid hat and get a chicken up here, but
I should warn you that Nathan was in there not too long ago.
I know. Yeah, he's everywhere. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm a little jealous that you get the Jeff Scott creations and.
Yeah, you should be. They're absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah, you didn't even provide pictures like Frank mentioned.
Here.
The picture of mine is not so beautiful anymore. It's already been largely eaten.
That's coming next. Mushrooms and polenta, I would say.
So what's left of the goat cheese gratin?
Oh yeah.
Wow, all of those look really nice.
Minus the toasts.
And there's more toast in the oven.
I love that. That's not the first time I've heard you get on that soapbox.
I know it's a thing of mine.
So I just wanted to talk really briefly about the Grenache, which is the reason that I was brought on, I believe.
No, because we haven't seen you in forever. We just wanted to see you. We don't.
We also want to hear you talk about Grenache, though.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I know you're eventually getting to Esprit, which is in the tasting pack that people are most excited about because they can actually taste with you. So I am honored to get to talk about the Grenache because I absolutely love Grenache. I feel like when I first started working in the cellar at Tablas Creek, my mom was asking how I liked the job. And I was telling her my coworkers were amazing. And, talking about Neil and how much I adored working with him. And then I started rattling off, working with all of the different varieties and talking about them as if they were personalities too. And Grenache, I think I went on the longest soliloquy about, because Grenache just has the most ridiculously buoyant personality. And I think in particular, this vintage is really, really fun because there are years where you get Grenache where it has that really jubilant mid palate. And it's those years, those vintages, I feel like we use it a lot in blending because if there's kind of these steely, harder edged components to, especially the Syrah or maybe sometimes the Mourvedre, the Grenache can kind of step in there and just kind of flesh everything out and make it really kind of that candied personality. So even just bumping that up 2-3%, all of a sudden that blend that you're trying to work on is much more approachable, much more beautiful. You also have the Grenache where it kind of leans more on the edge of kind of that rich, dense, chewy structure. And then you have a year like this year where I think it really showcases the purity of Grenache. You still get a little bit of that chewiness, a little bit of that sappiness. But to me, I think this just reminds me of like a walk in the woods kind of Grenache. It has that beautiful wild strawberry character. It's just, it's clean and it's like pure of spirit. And it's just one of those really fun Grenaches that I think it's gorgeous now, but with some age and with a little bit of patience, this is going to be incredibly rewarding for people that want to hold on to it a little bit longer.
I love that Pinot Noir, I think, has done Grenache a great service in convincing people, or at least demonstrating to people, that a wine doesn't have to be dark to be full of flavor and character. And I feel like that's the right lens to be looking at Grenache through. It's not like how dark and how tannic is it. It's how expressive is it in the frame that it has, because it's got brightness, it's got spice, it's got plenty of fruit. It's also got acid, and it's this kind of translucent. I don't know. There's no way that I can particularly show this. I don't think there's not enough light out here anymore. Sun's going down, but it's, you can see through it, and I feel like that comes through in the way that it tastes, and that's a really wonderful thing. I love red wines that have that kind of translucency and freshness and lift.
It's been one of my quests on my Friday night tastings is chasing Grenache, and because it's so difficult to pin down for me of where my favorite spot is for it. So with Angela and Jessica and Bob Lindquist also just kind of playing around Grenache and seeing and such massive differences clonally and picking decisions and fermentation decisions. There's so much you can do. There's so many directions you can take it in, and they're all glorious. I mean, yeah, well, they are until you get to the really big oaky ones, and then it's kind of a shame on the Grenache at that point for me. But but it can be done, and people love it. So it's just such a cool and versatile variety, and I think it's my least favorite to deal with in the cellar, just because I have a hard time figuring out where I want it to go and how to corral it. That's
And it takes
maybe
forever
that's
to
Chelsea's
get
job, but she's not here, so who's corralling it right now? Nobody.
Well, and
It also takes a long time for Grenache to show what it's going to be like. I mean, I feel like we always go through the cellar in November, and it's like, oh, the Syrahs are really good. Oh, these Counoises are really fun. Oh, these Mourvedres, these are going to be. Oh, there's Grenache. Like, it's not there yet. We want it to be there, and it's not there yet. It always takes time.
It's one of those things that you'd think I'd learn, but every year I go through all the rest, and I go, well, maybe it'll be all right. And you taste it and go, no, it's not all right. It's always slightly sweet and slightly cloudy and a little bit funky. And yeah, come back in April and we'll talk.
And when you do come back in April, it's well worth the wait.
Maybe Chelsea will be back in April. Who knows?
I'll be back in April. I miss you guys. Yeah, it's we were talking about Grenache back in January, and to what you were saying, Jason, I think it's so important. Grenache, I think, to me, is one of those varieties where color is not an indicator of power. And you look at this wine in your glass and you see that translucency, and it's so light and it's so beautiful. It just glows in the glass. and you think it's going to be this really like kind of dancing wine, and there is an element to that, but it's got this great tannic hold to it. These big, beefy, chewy tannins on the back end. So it's a really cool kind of juxtaposed wine. It doesn't necessarily taste like what you think it's going to once based on the appearance.
I'm not sure there's a vintage that we've made that I prefer over this one. I think this one shows really well for me. It's got the balance of all the things I like with Grenache.
Yep.
Someone just asked, are you tempted to put in more Mourvedre or Syrah? And certainly people do. I mean, there's a lot of Grenaches with Syrah. And I think people can be afraid of sometimes the paleness of Grenache. I mean, this one's got decent color. Sometimes it can be a little paler, and I'm guilty of that sometimes. But as Chelsea said, it will surprise you with it's not dark like Syrah, but it'll stand up for itself for sure. I mean, it has great power and structure without being incredibly deep in color. So is it necessary to add Syrah just to make it darker? I don't think so. I think it can be a distraction. I mean, if you want to make a Syrah Grenache blend, that's fine. But does it need it? I don't know that it generally does, apart from a color factor.
Yeah, there were a couple of years where we actually tried that, I think, in like,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when that was like 05 and 06 or
Yeah,
something.
it's a while ago.
That era. And it's been interesting going back and tasting those wines when we do the vertical tastings. And if in some ways maybe it is a more powerful wine, it's less Grenache, it's less expressive. And I feel like every time I've done one of those tastings in the last few years, I feel better about our decision to not adulterate it. That the purity and the expressiveness of it is really what we should be going after.
I always feel like a ridiculous feeling of guilt. So even though legally we're allowed to add 25% of something else and still call it that varietal, when I do, I feel like I'm cheating people. Really not cheating people, but really cheating the grape variety. Like,
Totally.
Yeah.
this isn't me by myself.
Cool.
That's
We should keep
ridiculous,
moving
I
because
know,
people have already been with us for an hour and 20 minutes, which is a huge honor. And but at the same time, we should keep moving. Chelsea, it is wonderful to see you. Can't wait to have you back. And thank you for taking a chunk out of your evening to join us and talk about Grenache.
It was my pleasure. Good to see you guys, and good to see everybody with their comments too.
Say
All
hi
right.
to baby and dad.
I will.
Okay, so let's taste the Angoblet.
She's such a stage stealer, isn't she?
I'm always happy to share the stage with Chelsea.
Yeah, me too. I don't get any choice. So Angoblet, I think for me, one of the most exciting things that we do, just because I do believe in it so fully in the dry farming that we do, both in the fact that we're using less water, but also that it's such a pure expression of the land, which has always been our goal. And for those that don't know, the Angoblet represents a wine made exclusively from lots that were dry farmed, like in that picture there, Scruffy Hill. This is Grenache moving down through Counoise to Mourvedre, and probably one of the most spectacular spots on the property. I heard many times that when Bob and the Prens were first wanting to buy the land, the soil scientists that came from France declared this to be one of the best spots on the entire property, and I don't disagree. But I think the dry farming is such an important thing moving forward. And the Angoblet is our display of that. It's the purest expression of the piece of land as far as being non-irrigated, the minimum influence from us. And of course, a lot of these grapes go into the Esprit, and quite often the Panoply gets the first shout, always. So it gets some of this too. But I love the fact that the Angoblet is, it's 100% only irrigated by rainfall, and that's it. So it's on its own out there, which is crazy to think and it weathers the droughts, etc., better than a lot of the irrigated sections because it's by itself and it's digging deep for water. And it's a great commitment on the part of Tablas Creek to do that because it takes a lot longer in time to go from planting to production, and the yields will never be the same as we can get off of a lot of the trellis vineyards. So it's another display of Tablas's commitment to do what we believe is the right thing and the right choice. And as always with Tablas, it's been slow progression, but you got to wait to see that what you believed would be so ends up being so. And I think the Engoblé shows that it is the right direction.
There's a question that came up asking why the vines are so far apart. Basically, these are planted without any. It's not just that they're not irrigated; they're planted without any irrigation infrastructure. So, in order to give the roots enough cubic yards of soil to pull what they need out, when you can't supplement, you just got to reduce the density. And it's a very old-fashioned way of planting. It's really, if you drive around to look at the old Zinfandel vineyards in Paso Robles that have been around since before Prohibition, they're planted like this. And it's just a low touch, very ultimate in sustainability in the way that you plant a vineyard.
And we can quantify that by, when we plant a trellis vineyard, we're at about 1,800 vines to the acre. When we plant a dry farm vineyard, I think it's 306. And it really was those local Zinfandel vineyards that inspired me to look at it and go, that vineyard's been here for 80 years. That vineyard's been here for 60 years. That guy's been here for 100 years. This can be done here, just like they do it in other parts, in Chateauneuf and other parts of the world. We can do that here, perhaps, with Grenache. And so we talked about it and we tried, and it worked, and it continues to work, and it continues to be really healthy and strong and impressive vineyard sites. And I may be horribly wrong, but I would say that, in 50, 60 years, Scruffy Hill's still going to be there, and it's going to be producing incredible wine from this property, and it's one of the beautiful things of what we do is, so I planted Scruffy Hill. I was up there. The wine club helped plant Scruffy Hill in a small part, but the people that get the great benefit from that planting will be generations away. It'll be Jason's kids, my kids. They'll see it. Their kids, they're gonna see, if it can get that far, they're gonna see the glory of those dry farm vineyards to me. And that to me is super exciting. Even though jealously I won't be able to taste it, I know that it's going to be spectacular.
There were two questions that came in that were getting at basically the same thing. One of them, Brian said, has to be tough and somewhat nerve-wracking in hot, dry years. And Richard said, asked if we have more vine attrition. It's actually the opposite. If you look at how much different vineyard blocks suffer when we go through a heat spike or a drought, these head trained dry farmed vines actually suffer less because their roots are down deeper. They barely notice what's at the surface, and they've got more cubic yards of soil to draw from. It's the vines that are planted close together, but still we've been trying to dry farm, so the roots are mostly down. So any supplementing that we do has only limited impact. Those are the ones that suffer more. These are the ones that we think will be the most long lived and ultimately are the most resilient.
The wine itself is tasting incredible. So it's kind of soft, and the great balance and great fruit, a great intricacy to it. I would say the tannins, which the Grenache tannins in there, are beautiful. They're soft and chewy. There's no hard edges to me. Really, really pleased with the way that's tasting tonight.
There's kind of a chocolatiness to it that I don't know if that's the relatively high percentage of Syrah in this, or whether that's the Tannat, but
it's a less bitter chocolate though than you often get.
It is. It's delicious.
Yeah, it's really tasting well. And so we're 36% Grenache, 28 Mourvedre, 27 Syrah, 6 Counoise, and 3% Tannat. And tonight, everyone's, oh, that's weird, but we didn't have any Syrah in the ground when we first started with the En Goblet, and it fills the spot, and it also gives some of our first plantings were dry farm tonight, and it also gives En Goblet a little character of its own. I always feel,
Yeah.
Too much is too much, but in an element, and it does bring something, because we often age some of it without the tonight, and it does bring, for 3%, it brings more than you might think. Oh, chef just entered the room. Oh, he didn't bring me more toast though.
No, he's bringing a new warm,
Right.
a new
No
warm.
toast or a micro grater.
There have been a couple of people who've said that they're opening older vintages, and the question from Olivier that's up now about how we see this aging. How would you answer that, Neil?
I think it's going to age incredibly well. I really do. I think this is going to be a long-lived wine. It has all the structure and the acidity and the balance to go and go. And honestly, off of this property, I'm astounded. And this isn't, I didn't buy and choose to plant this property. This is a somewhat third party, 2.5 party opinion. Going back and tasting it, we opened a 99 Blanc with lunch the other day. And yeah, it had age on it, but it was totally drinkable and enjoyable. That's from 7-year-old, was the oldest grapevine that went into that. And the red's even more so. I mean, I continue to be pleased with how a lot of these wines age. And I think the dry farming and the style in which that wine is grown and produced will lend it to great ageability. And tasting it, I don't see why not.
Yep. And Tannat is a famously ageable grape.
It's a famously necessity to age it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Age it or else. But no, I mean, the older En Goblets that I've opened have all been terrific. And it's not like we don't have any that are that old. Our first vintage was only 2007. And it was a fairly different profile because we didn't have any Syrah yet. We didn't have Scruffy Hill in production yet. But no, I think this is going to go out a long way.
It's so elegant right now. For a wine so young, it's just blowing me away. It's beautiful.
That's 18 for me. I mean, the elegance of all of the 18s is its most noteworthy characteristic. Okay, let's talk about the Esprit. Oh, sorry. Well, I'll answer Teresa's question while I pour. Teresa's question is, would a field blend ever be considered? The challenge with field blends is that these grapes don't get ripe at the same time. And so if you're just picking everything and just co-fermenting it, you end up with underripe stuff and overripe stuff, or some balance of that. And that's tough. That's not what you want. So I could certainly imagine a block designate, so a wine that would be just from Scruffy Hill, but I don't think it would be co-fermented. So it would be fermented in component pieces and then reblended. I mean, that's sort of the way that Scruffy Hill was planted. It was planted with the idea that it could one day be a self-sufficient field blend.
It's my dream to have a Scruffy Hill designate. I think that would be fantastic one day. And we're getting there. I think the age of vines is getting us to a point where we can look. That's a serious conversation now. Before maybe it wasn't. The Grenache wasn't quite there, but we're getting to a point where the Grenache is there. It's got 14 years on it, and that would be a really fun thing one day for me. An En Goblet kind of is that, in that it's all dry farm, but to have that piece, which has always been such a special piece for so many reasons. I mean, Jason's sister named it Scruffy Hill. The first luncheon that was ever had on Tablas Creek was Kentucky Fried Chicken on top of that hill. I mean, there's so many reasons why, and it was deemed by the French soil scientists to be the best soil on the property. There's so many reasons why that would be cool, with a red and white stripy label like Kentucky Fried Chicken box.
Maybe not. Why you are in the winemaking team and not the marketing team? No, and I think the main reason why we haven't done that is that there are so many of those lots that we also want to be able to pick for Panoply and for Esprit, that we just want to preserve our options to use some of those lots for the very top things that we do. So with that as the segue, let's talk about the Esprit. So this is the 2018 Esprit de Tablas. Always led by Mourvedre. This vintage a little more Syrah than Grenache. John, yes, you have our permission to
Go.
open the second bottle.
So Esprit, really, I would think I would not be out of line to say that more than any other wine, this is Tablas Creek's reason for being. I mean, I believe that the two families very much thought that red wine would be the superior wine off this property. I think the white and how great it has shown has been a surprise. And as we said earlier, that it was going to be a red and white. This would have been the red, and this would always have been the red. These were the grapes that were planted with this blend in mind, and it just keeps evolving. I mean, how many vintages? 2000 was the first vintage.
Yeah.
So it keeps growing and evolving. The vines get older. We understand it more, which is also an important part that we overlook, I think, often. And I haven't tried this yet, but if the other 18s are anything to go by, I'm optimistic. And John already finished one bottle, so it can't be. Yeah. It smells beautiful.
I mean, Mourvedre is the star of this show. And what we try to do is incorporate enough of the other components, enough Syrah for darkness and mineral and kind of that chalky tannic character, and enough Grenache for licorice and fruit and acidity, and enough Counoise for spice and acidity to highlight what we love about the Mourvedre. But we really want the Mourvedre to shine. And I feel like that kind of loamy, chocolatey, currant, dark red fruit Mourvedre character really, for me, sings out in this vintage of Esprit.
Yeah, I hate to be the guy that's saying the new vintage is, it's the greatest vintage we've ever made. This is tasting really well. I mean, it's a wine that's at 13.5% alcohol, yet it's got richness, it's got balance, it's got elegance, it's got longevity. I mean, it has everything. It's tasting so well right now. Thank you, Jeffrey.
It's a really good pairing with polenta mushroom. Okay, I'll try to show this. Oops, I just dumped a mushroom on my keyboard.
Yeah, there you go. That'll be getting cleaned. So, I mean, the Mourvedre shows through beautifully. Syrah in this vintage takes a lead with 27%, Grenache at 23%. And those are the two that move around the most in this blend. Just such a great gamey, meaty, rich nose backed up by great dark fruit. Long and super fresh. It's bright. It's young, still so young, but again, it's beautiful now. Put it away 5, 7, 10 years. It's going to just get better and better, more girthy, perhaps. No, it's not a good term. It's going to have more wisdom to it. I don't know what the right term is, but you can see it filling out and getting those very bright primary flavors becoming darker, more mushroomy, more forest flory, but the game sticking in there. It's such a great starting point for wine to me.
And I've come to believe that Paso Robles is one of the greatest places in the world to grow Mourvedre. And I say this knowing that I'm comparing it to places like Bandol and Jumilla, and but Mourvedre ripens really late. It's always a struggle for us. It's almost always the last thing that comes in. But when it's getting those last little bits of ripening, I mean, like today, it got up to 90, but it was in the 40s last night, and it's not hot for very long. It's cooling down already. I have short sleeves out here, and I'm worried that by the time we're done, I'm going to be cold. I'm not going to do that. But it means that there's only a few hours that are really in Grapevine's prime ripening kind of sweet spot. So you get your last little bits of ripening gradually. You don't pick up too much sugar. I mean, I love the fact that this is under 14% alcohol. and yet there's so much intensity of texture and flavor that goes with it. So I think, I mean, Mourvedre is not a household name. We're doing everything that we can to help it be less obscure, but I fully expect in 50 years, if I'm still around, to notice it, that when you see the list of the best places in the world for Mourvedre, Paso Robles is going to be right at the top of that list.
I couldn't disagree with that at all. And I think one of the things that I believe is areas where the grape variety just makes it to ripeness, that's the great moment. You know, if it ripens too early, it's too fast. With Mourvedre here, we have so many vintages where we're scared because the rain's coming, it's getting cold, but it just shines. It's such a good variety here, and the others are all great backups for it in this blend. But Mourvedre always holds an anchor on this wine, and I love it. And it evolves and ages so well, but they all do. You know, Grenache does too. The Grenache ages beautifully as well. But again, when you go to a blend as opposed to a single, all those things as they age become more and more intricate and more interesting to me, and less apparent. You know, you can almost feel the varieties more distinctly here. 5-10 years from now, it'll just be one, and you won't be able to see them so clearly, I think.
Okay, we're going to answer a couple of questions. I love this one. Was planning to save the 2018. Will we miss much by opening it now? The 2018 is beautiful. We have enough of it that you can open it now and still buy 6 bottles and age it and watch it evolve over time.
And that's the plan you should follow, really.
The plan you should follow. I make a wine resolution every New Year. I mean, my wine resolution last year was to buy fewer wines, but more of the ones that I really love, so I could watch them evolve. And I think that's really good advice. I have tried to execute it in my own life. I haven't always been great at it, but this is a wine that I think you will really, you'll enjoy going on a journey with it as it ages.
Yeah.
I think we should probably bring in Jeff to talk about the pairings for this, because it is not just a delicious wine on its own. It is a wine that really shines with food. So, hey, welcome back.
I'm going to eat now.
Okay, great. Well, I heard you talking a little bit about the Esprit, and I tasted it myself, and it is really, like you said, projected to be so many other things besides how great it is right now. And I was tasting it and getting some of that, one of my favorite characteristics, that saddle leather earthiness in the wine. Do you agree, Neil and Jason?
Totally.
And so the idea behind doing a dish of polenta and mushrooms is so often with a great red wine, as the Esprit is, we do complicated dishes. We do a lot of proteins and a lot of sauces and things like that. And it was my idea to kind of pull back a little bit and, for lack of a better analogy, let the wine be the sauce to the dish. And so we decided to do something almost in a peasant style, where we slow cook polenta so that it's soft and creamy, adding a little bit of fontina cheese and Parmesan Reggiano, and of course a little bit of butter to it. And then roasting a couple of different mushrooms and simply topping that polenta with the roasted mushrooms. And if you taste the wine and see all of that earthiness and quality that's coming out of it as it is right now, then you taste the food and go back to the wine. You see that the wine exhibits even a creamy character almost, or kind of almost pops the fruit in the wine a little bit, just because the earthiness of the dish is matching the earthiness of the wine. And I love that type of pairing, so it's really exciting for me to see it happening, and the wine is beautiful. Soft polenta is a great dish to do and very easy to do. You just have to cook it for about an hour, let it slow roll on your stove. The ratio between liquid and polenta is pretty high, so it's not going to burn. And then you finish it with butter and cheeses. And the mushrooms I selected for tonight are 2 different types. It's a king oyster mushroom and a king trumpet mushroom. And do you guys see how the mushrooms are meaty and have a lot of texture, almost like steak-like in texture? Do you know what I mean?
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of not chew to it, but there's a lot of texture to it. And that's really a great thing because you're looking at that mushroom providing that kind of texture that's going to play along with the wine as well. We finished it with a hint of truffle oil,
I can taste it.
and I think it's important to talk about truffle oil for just a minute because you can't use a cheap truffle oil. You have to use the best one you can find. And I have the best one that I have my favorite truffle oil with me, and this is what we finished the dish with. Again, if you use a cheaper truffle oil, it can taste, I don't want to say rancid, but it can taste a little bit off and ruin your dish and doesn't taste like truffle at all. It just tastes like bad olive oil. So this is a Tokia Italian black truffle oil, and it's the one that I prefer to use. It's the only truffle oil that I use, and it tastes fresh and vibrant and is something that's not too out of the box unaffordable for you to use in your house, and just finish any dish with it. Don't cook with it, but just drizzle over the top, and you'll see a world of great pairings. And this type of a dish is so great with Esprit. But if you go back in your cellar and start looking at Esprits that if you have any that are 5, even 10 years old, those types of wines are great with something simple like mushrooms and polenta. It was some great wine collectors I cooked for years ago in Los Angeles that taught me, why don't you just settle down with all these different sauces and meats and things like that, and just give us a dish of mushrooms so we can enjoy our 30-year-old wine. And that taught me a lot. I think it's important to cook with humility to wine.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I think we should, as we're talking about Mourvèdre so much, I think we would be negligent if we didn't recognize, and correct my pronunciation, please, Jason, but if we didn't recognize the passing of Loulou Perrault of Tempier, Domaine Tempier in Bandol, who probably, there is no more famous Mourvèdre on this planet than Tempier, in my opinion. I had the pleasure to meet her and taste with her and be at that domain, and she passed away at the age of 103 or 104 about a week ago. So I'd like to have a cheers to her and her family.
And this is, of course, where the Mourvèdre vines at Beaucastel came from, and it was Jacques Perrin's friendship with the Perrault family that was where he went to go and get Mourvèdre vines to replant the vineyards at Beaucastel in the 1950s, and then the cuttings of those that came to us. So
we have her to thank for us doing this tasting, and so I'd like to do that. Cheers to her. And those wines are stunning, of course.
Yep. We have can you, Jeff, spell out again the name of that truffle oil? Several people are asking like what its name is and where they can find it. And
Toccata. I'll hold it up for you. I use
can't see it.
Wholesale, can't see it. Toccata. I use a wholesale Italian distributor is how I get the truffle oil, but I know that you can find it online as well from several gourmet grocers, and it's a little expensive, but it's definitely worth it. If you get a truffle oil of this character, keep it in your refrigerator, and it's going to look a little bit funny because it starts to get a little, I guess, a little gelatin looking, which is okay because when it comes to room temperature, it'll again liquefy. But it can go rancid if you let it sit for months in your cupboard. So keep it in your refrigerator. Yes.
My dog has evidently decided that it's time for us to be done. She just decided to go start running around and barking. So if you hear her in the background, that's her, not us.
She's probably not wrong. People have been listening to us for an hour and 45 minutes, and it's Friday night.
Richard asked, will the goat cheese and roasted mushrooms recipes be posted? They are already posted. We have them up on the event listing of this page on our website. We will put them in the recipes section of the website when now that the event thing will be in the past. So yes, they'll be up on the website for people to try at home if you didn't do it tonight. So I feel like, again, we've kept people for an hour and 45 minutes, which is about 45 minutes longer than we were planning. We are really grateful that you stuck around to listen and pay attention to this. I just have a couple of things to close with. One, we look forward to having you back when we are able to host larger events again. Up until that point, we're going to continue to try to be in touch with you through things like this. So if you are not yet following us on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, we're doing things on all three of those channels. So please continue to participate. We're super grateful for your participation and your questions and following along with us. The second thing to remind you, the wines we normally do for our pickup party, we normally do a 5% discount on the shipment wines the day of the event. Obviously, there's no single day of the event, but we decided to do the same thing. We started that extra 5% discount for club members on the shipment wines last week. It'll go until this next Friday, a week from today. So if there are these wines that you would like, there's an extra discount on them for that week. And then last piece is we will be doing something similar to this for our en primeur, our annual futures tasting in early December. So stick around if you want to hear us talk about the new 2019 Esprit and Panoply. You'll also be getting an invitation to buy the futures next month. So that'll be happening next. So that's it. On behalf of Neil, on behalf of Chelsea, on behalf of the rest of my family and all of us here at Tablas Creek, we are honored and humbled and really grateful for all of your support over the last 6 months and the last 3 decades. We couldn't do it without you, and we're always grateful. So thank you for being a part of the Tablas Creek family. Any final words, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. It was an interesting thing to do, but it turned out, I think, very nicely, and I'm so grateful for all the participation and questions for everybody out there, and thanks to everyone at Tablas Creek in the background involved in what we've done and how we've kept this whole COVID time being vibrant, and it's been a great time. It's been a great learning thing. I mean, doing this has been super exciting, and I can't appreciate people coming on and listening to you and I talk for an hour and 45 minutes enough, and the wines are tasting great, I'm going to say, because I haven't tasted them in a while. So thank you very much for joining in and listening to us. And thank you, Jeff, for great food.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shout out to Ian Consoli, who's been producing this behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
And the driver behind a lot of the live stuff that we've been able to bring you over the last 6 months. So thanks, Ian. Thanks, everybody. We look forward to seeing you at the next event.
South of Sacramento, in that old town I swore I'd never leave. Summers I'd head up to the mountains with my dad and brother pulled trout from the stream. Slice of heaven. Gotta get on out and watch the sun go down. Pain in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good. Taking it face down. Took a road out to the coast, under the trees with the one I love the most. There we'd walk along the river with our hopes and dreams and our dog's ghost. coming. Won't do nobody good. Taking it face down. Gotta get on out, watch the sun go down. Ain't in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good, taking it face down. Gotta find your own slice of heaven. Gotta get on out, watch the sun go down. Ain't in life, it don't stop coming. Won't do nobody good, taking it